What's up, guys? Welcome to this very special edition of Unemployable Today. We have a special guest on with us, Tommy Gallant, who is a friend of mine from Australia, who moved to Cyprus and came to the London Freedom Rally on the weekend. In this episode, we talk about our on-the-ground experience at this really incredible and important event globally. And we get into some really, at times, tense discussions, probably one of the most intense pods I think we've done. We butted heads at certain points, and we got very deeply personal towards the end, and asked some very, very big questions of life and the big decisions that we're making in it. There's no business in this one. It is all about the world we live in today, and it's four guys trying to figure it out in real time on camera. I hope you like it. If you haven't already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. Helps us grow the channel, helps us get better guests, and encourages us to keep going. So with that said, I hope you enjoy this one. Bye for now. All right, guys. Well, it is wonderful to be back with you all. We are joined by Perye. We are joined by Tommy, a guest on the podcast today, and of course, the one and only Mark DiPolo, who's joining us from Melbourne. Now, this is a bit of a special podcast because I'm in Kuala Lumpur. Perye is in London. It's about midnight there. Tommy is in Sydney. And just, less than 24 hours ago, the three of us were all in London. And then, of course, we got Mark in from Melbourne. So we sort of dispersed to the four corners of the world. It's 6 a.m. here. It's midnight in London. And it's early morning in Melbourne and Sydney. So how are you, boys? Thank you for making the effort for this special pod. How you all doing? You good?
Wired.
Still coming to terms. Still coming to terms the last week, mate. It was what a roller coaster of humanity, actually. Wow. How often does that stuff happen in your life?
Yeah. So high level, let's start with that. Like, how are you feeling, PB? Like, it was a pretty massive event. The whole internet is talking about it, guys. We are here to, of course, talk about the Tommy Robinson Freedom Rally on the weekend. Perye, how are you feeling right now, mate? Like, what's going on for you still?
It's funny. I can still hear the chanting. Keir Starmer is a wanker in my ears. Literally, I was lying in bed and I could hear it. I was going, "How can I still hear this?" Like, it's been 2 days, but it was I don't know how to explain it, but the energy there was electric. Like, you could literally feel how people were feeling. There was so much good energy. I was a little bit worried. I thought that there was going to be something potentially going wrong, especially with that many people locked in such a small space, really. But every single person you looked at smiled. Everyone was waving their flags, and it was a good day to be British.
One of the things I reflected on leading into the event, and I expressed this to a couple of my very, very close friends, because, of course, I don't know whether it was the same for you. I'd be interested, but I got so many messages from people saying, "You make sure you be careful. I know you're going to be close to Tommy on the day." I found myself looking at rooftops, after a little bit of 9/11. For months afterwards, I would watch planes as they flew over cities. It just adjusted the way I saw things. And what I articulated to a couple of my friends on Sunday, the day after I went and did some washing at a laundromat, I just needed to turn my head off. And I just took the time to send a voice note to a couple of friends. And I said, "You know what? Right now I'm still processing, but one thing that has really hit me is, like, I deeply appreciate you sending this message of concern, and it's valid, right? Because of violence and because of what happened during the week with Charlie and all that stuff. But it's also really the reason I stepped forward and you guys stepped forward and, hundreds of thousands of millions of others stepped forward on that day, is that when we don't do this and we don't find a voice and speak up and we actually comply with the intent of the violence, which is to silence you, which is to stay indoors, which is not to put yourself in harm's way and speak up and let the aggressors have their way through threat of violence. And so this is what I tried to explain to some of my close friends. Your concern is valid, and it's really pushed me to a point of having to ask a really hard question of, okay, so what do you do in the face of fear of personal safety? And it's a real question, and it's a really interesting one. Tommy, how are you processing, mate? How are you going?
Man, I'm still thinking about the whole Charlie Kirk thing. I still get flashbacks on that, and it really touches me emotionally. Like watching Instant, watching his wife talk, other people, the lady, the Greek, I think, politician, just at some big Euro convention right now. Everybody's bouncing off the Charlie Kirk thing, and I think, if anything, what it does, Adam, is it everybody came together. You know, safety in numbers, and I think in one of the interviews someone said, "Hey, does this look like extreme right to you? There's mothers and fathers and kids out here." And I think being in the press pen, it was kind of surreal. I couldn't really absorb it at the time because, you know, we were in the I guess the spiritual field of battle right on the front line there, you know, taking catching content and setting up interviews and so on. Coming out of it after, going, holy shit, I just was part of and you know, felt this whole. I was part of this massive event of 1 million plus people. Like this was historic, you know. And the turning point, I think, funny and ironic in a way, that Charlie represented a turning point, and I think the turning point was in his passing. I mean, I think the world's woken up. It's going to be very interesting to see where it goes from here.
Guys,
I had that. Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to ask a question, because for those of us who weren't there, and I know a lot of the listeners maybe weren't at the Australia marches either, whether it be the Sydney Harbour Bridge or the March for Australia. But the thing that we always seems to guide our opinions of the march is those snippets that we see of something extreme that happened at the march. So if you're on one side of the debate, you're informed by something you saw put out by one side of the debate, and if you're on the other side of the debate, you focus on what you saw on the other side of the debate. But you guys were there, and the mainstream media in the UK, I think, has reported 100,000 people. It looked way more than 100,000 people. But let's just say, Tommy's team said 1 million, MSM said 100,000. Let's say it was somewhere in the middle, right? It's a lot of people. I would really like you guys to kind of paint the picture for those who weren't there. Forget about the extremities, forget about the extremes, but what was the majority, you know, what was the 80%? What did the 80% look like who were there? What did they look like? How old were they? What were they talking about? What was their vibe? You know, being boots on the ground. Because I think that's the true reporting of these events, is to try and understand why were the majority there.
Sorry, didn't see you there. While you're here, actually, we've got a new coaching cohort that just opened up for the Unemployable Property Coaching Program, that you get taught on how to become a property developer. One-on-one coaching, bi-monthly coaching, and also events where we get a full coach bus with all the students and go to 6-7 different development sites. When I say development sites, from 1 lot to 10 lots to 50 lots. So you get to see exactly why we buy it, how we fund it, and also how you can do it yourself. The next day, we had an amazing event at the QT Hotel here on the Gold Coast, where we had all of our consultants come in and teach everybody on what they're looking for with sites, what are the different trends, and how you can become a property developer yourself. Now you see me on the video, but who you're going to be getting coached by is Shannon and Carson. Who's Shannon and Carson? 4 years ago, Carson was cleaning carpets. Shannon was a machine operator. Today, they're doing over $100 million worth of land deals. I know you're listening, and I know you want to take action. And if that's you, click on the link below or go to www.unemployableproperty.com.au and register your interest, and one of our team will reach out to you, and we'll see you on the next bus. Now get out of here.
Sorry, you go.
I'd go up to you, mate.
Yeah, Mark, I feel actually safe, to be quite honest. I was nervous in the beginning, as everybody said at the beginning, but I didn't see one bit of violence. And I was on, you know, I was coming over in the big bomb on the 380 back, and I'm looking at some BBC coverage, and all it shows is the violent stuff. I'm thinking, I didn't see that anywhere, like nowhere. As far as the number of people, I've never had to, I had to space out time to get to the airport, and we started getting concerned because it was taking forever. Of any concert, of any rally, I was part of the Canberra protest as well. To get out is the longest by far it ever took me to get out. There were so many people, and I think we were in the outskirts of it somewhere. We could sort of look for the shortest route out, you know. So I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, like to answer that, Mark, is they look like every person that I've ever met in England just wandering around, but in just one place throwing their flags around. They were just British people, and that was one of the most heartwarming things for me. Is there was a couple of times I got teared up just because I was like, this is my country, these are my countrymen, these are people that I've probably walked in the street with before. They've come from all other places, but we've all come to one place. And it's funny you say about the dangers that they were putting out. Now, obviously, when you've got that many people, yes, there is going to be some sort of clashes, interactions. But it's funny, there was a video of a woman, I think it was last year at the Notting Hill Carnival, basically going over how, there was like 8 stabbings, there was like two fights, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of it, she goes, but overall, not a bad day. And it was like, what do you mean? But they pictured it in such a positive light, whereas this, like, it was so positive, but the media's just immediately brushed it with the far right label again, and it's like that's not what this was. So
I mean, there were several moments, guys, during that day that were quite profound for me. But Tommy, you touched on one there, which was I found myself, within arm's reach, literally, of the stage. And when Tommy entered, we were right there at the front. We could have shook his hand. He gave me a nod when he went by. And then I looked beyond the media pen fence, and there's 1 million people lined up behind it, literally. And Tommy's team was saying 3 million, not 1 million. Yeah. So it was definitely not 100,000. I put up a thing on Instagram with the MCG saying, this is the MCG. You can stand 80,000 people shoulder to shoulder on the field. And I had that image up while I showed the drone footage of the event. There's no way it was 100,000 people. I mean, you get out of the MCG on a big footy game and you're out in 10 minutes. It took us more than an hour just to get out of Whitehall on foot. Like, it was crazy. But so that was a pretty.
These hats helped, didn't it? Having these hats, because I used to look around and be like, oh, there's an unemployable boy. There's an unemployable boy.
Yeah. But having the hats and but I had these moments where I'd sit there and I go, why are we here? Like, why are we here within maybe 80 people in the media pen, and 1 million people would have traded to be right where we were standing, which was remarkable for one. But what also struck me in hindsight was that not a few blocks from there is where Winston Churchill ran the war. And I've actually been to those Churchill war rooms underneath London City. And it's one of the most incredible historical experiences that you can have in your life. They've literally preserved his bedroom, his desk, where he slept, where his media team were, his strategy team, everything was being run. And what really struck me was that, back then, and this is not that long ago, this is in the 1940s, when London had tens of thousands of bombs raining down on that city. Think about that for a moment. If one bomb went off in Australia, the whole world would stop, right? If it was from a foreign party, right? This is a city with tens of thousands of bombs being dropped on one city, London, right? Now, during that time in the Blitz, we had the Germans flying over from France. France capitulated when the Germans came over the Belgian mountains within 48 hours because they didn't want the violence. They didn't want their city broken. Germany basically marched through Europe, and they hit a brick wall when they got to the United Kingdom. And this is very personal for me because a lot of people might not know this, but I'm a British dual citizen. My grandmother, Iris Curtis, was born in Wales and worked on the planes in Coventry that saved and ultimately won the war. And those, as Winston Churchill said, never have so many relied on the courage of so few to save them, which is what Winston Churchill said when he spoke of the RAF, who with 600 planes were fighting a Luftwaffe, the Luftwaffe with 2,400 planes fighting 600 British pilots. And the reason that they won is because the Germans made a strategic mistake and decided to go all in and try to bomb London into the ground instead of continuing with bombing the support fields and the RAF fields where my grandmother was actually working on those planes. When Winston decided not to capitulate, when everybody told him while he was underground in that city, not a few blocks from where we were standing, they said, give in, capitulate, give in to the terror, give in to the ideology, and just let London fall. Winston went out on the trains of London undercover and spoke to the British people. And he asked them, guys, there are going to be deaths. Mark, are you typing?
Yes, sir.
There are going to be deaths. People are going to die. What should I do? And overwhelmingly, the British people who were first shocked to see Winston Churchill in the underground unanimously said, fight. Fuck the Germans, fight. Do you know where Keir Starmer was when more than 1 million of his subjects who were pissed off enough to join the largest street demonstration in the history of Europe, not just England? Do you know where he was? He was watching Arsenal play.
Shocker.
Hey, man.
Jeez.
He was watching the football.
I've got a similar one there. Similar one there, Adam. But since we're doing the heritage, pulling the heritage heartstrings here, the Greeks, and some of you might have heard this before, there's a day called Orchi Day. And it's when Mussolini contacted the Greek Prime Minister during the Second World War and said, listen, we're kind of asking permission to come through and, to fight the battle and so on. And, of course, Mussolini and Hitler were mates back then. And the Prime Minister also paused for a moment. And there's something that rises up in you, right? And he said, Orchi, and put the phone down. Orchi translated is no. And they held back. I think they thought it was a blitzkrieg, and the Germans thought they were going to be able to easily then, because Hitler then got on the phone and said, what are you doing? This isn't part of the plan. So as the Italians were going through, I think made short work of the Italians, then the Germans came through. So it was a bit of that recreation of the Spartan 300, movie that we've all seen. And they held them back for like 3 months. And the Germans thought it was going to be a blitzkrieg where they could just walk straight through. Now, what that did was Russia was where they were headed, and it went into winter. And the Germans were held back long enough, and Congress talk about this, where they say that if it wasn't for that and holding back and at least until winter, that was a turning point in itself in the Second World War.
It's funny because, I'm sure there'll be people out there listening that'll straight away start thinking, well, who was responsible for the war? Who was the good guy? Who was the bad guy? But I think that misses, at least from where I'm sitting, it misses the point. And the point is that the courageous people that were fighting in these wars from both sides had no choice on whether they went to war or not. They had no choice. They had to go and they had to fight because they were embroiled in something that, for whatever reason, occurred. The thing that strikes me is that today we all kind of have a choice whether we want to speak up or let things kind of slide. But it's the courage of those who are willing to fight that should be admired. And I think that's why the Charlie Kirk thing has hit so hard for so many people. Like, I've seen so many people here in Australia and in America celebrate, but a lot of them aren't celebrating. A lot of them are saying, well, what about the people in Palestine? What about, that we have an unequal mourning of death or and one of the things that I keep saying is perhaps you're confusing, like nobody debates that women and children being murdered isn't an atrocity. No one debates that. But I think the reason the thing like Charlie Kirk has been such a big thing is because everyday people at that point realize that they too could be in danger, not just this obscure country on the West Bank or whatever it is. They realize that they too, in their everyday choice to speak up or to say something, can be targeted. I think that's why it's hitting home so hard.
No. Yes, it is, Mark. And I want every Australian listening to this to hear what I'm about to say. I want you to think about the state of the current world we live in this context. Imagine it's 1940 and, like my grandmother, you're working in a plane factory in Coventry supporting the boys, right? You're servicing the flaps on the wings is what my grandmother did. And it was because of that shift of focus to bombing London that enabled the RAF to train up and build more pilots and people like my grandmother who worked around the clock to get those planes up in the air, which ultimately saved England. Think about the courage of those boys. 600 of them going into the skies, outnumbered 5-1 against the fearsome Germans, knowing that there's a very good chance you're going to get shot down and die. The planes were weaker militarily than the German planes, for sure.
There was no escape parachutes either.
No escape parachutes, right?
Like today.
And you would say, think about the meaning of the words. You be careful out there today versus the lovely sentiments I got on my iPhone in 2025. You be careful out there today. Right now, the intention is the same, but what is my courage versus the courage of those young guys? It ain't shit.
Yeah.
Right? Yet we are so complacent and afraid that we won't even go up off our couch and find our voice. We won't stand up and publish something online because we're afraid of being labeled racist. Those are the modern bullets. You know, you're afraid of somebody. Like, I got a Muslim guy yesterday texting me, I'm unfollowing you now that you are an extreme right Tommy Robinson supporter. That's his weapon, is his attention and withdrawing it from my social media. These are the bullets of modern life, and how piss weak we've become that we let this fear of being labeled and this fear of losing a follower and this fear of joining a group march, our friends might think, when the boys back in the day literally strapped themselves into a fucking machine that flew into the sky when they're outnumbered 5-1. And if the shit goes south, you are dead, literally. And, you know, this is the world we're coming to. And somebody asked me, do you think Australia will wake up soon? I said, we said it on the pod, Mark, not long ago. But the Brits, I heard on the ground, to answer your question, Mark, we collared, you know, grandmothers and veterans and all kinds of people. And this common theme, one question I asked was, if you could go back in a time machine 10 years and grab yourself by the shoulders and say, this is what's coming to the UK, what advice would you give yourself 10 years ago? And they all said the same thing. Don't lose your voice, articulate your feelings, protect your free speech. These are grandmothers. I remember one grandmother, she was right on the edge. She'd been there as from early in the morning. She was right on the edge of the media pen, as close as you could get out of 1 million people before you had to have a media badge. And she was there wrapped in the flag. And I said to her, why are you here? She looked down the barrel and she said, I want you, Billy, or whatever her grandson's name, and tears filled in her eyes. She said, I want my grandson to be watching this one day when I'm dead and gone, and I want him to remember me like this, as somebody who was on the front line, unafraid to speak, to protect his freedoms. That was a grandmother wrapped in the British flag. And that's what I heard over and over.
Yeah. Adam, what was you were speaking of Churchill before. What was the famous inflection point with Churchill? I was trying to look it up before, but I couldn't find it. The famous inflection point before when Churchill appealed to the Americans and the Americans stepped in. Do you remember what that what that was. Something happened.
Yeah, I'm not a massive, despite that little bit of knowledge, I'm not a world-class World War II expert by any stretch, but there were several moments in the war.
Pearl Harbor happened.
Well, Pearl Harbor happened, yeah. But you know, to answer the question, there was just a lot of ordinary people. What struck me was, you know, like when you see, you know, a debate on the left, you often will see riots and looting and fires. Here you had more people than ever, but none of that, no violence, none of that stuff happening. It was very, like, people were jovial, respectful. Yeah.
Someone was, I don't know where I saw it, but someone was showing the all the riots and the looting post George Floyd. So after the George Floyd incident, there was riots and looting, and there was all kinds of stuff happening on the streets. But I haven't yet, and someone might correct me if it's happening, but I haven't yet seen the same response on the streets to the Charlie Kirk in the USA.
I want to point out one thing that I did come away with on a little bit of a negative, which I thought would be just good for balance. And I'd be interested in your take, Perye and Tommy, having been there as well. There is this sort of, you know, and I think credible criticism of the protest that, you know, all of a sudden, it did have a very religious Christian,
very strong
Hillsong vibe to it at certain points, right?
Yeah, it did.
And all of a sudden, people who were like on the piss, definitely not living strict Christian lifestyle, shall we say, were all of a sudden cross-bearing Christians for the day.
Seriously.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of crosses, Mark. A lot of crosses.
Well, if you follow the Illuminati and the Masonic and all that kind of scripture, that the only solution is God and all that. So maybe everyone's kind of swinging.
Well, it was good in a way, because I did engage with some comments around this, because it did give me pause where I thought, you know, that is true. That you can't say that most of those people are Christian people that were marching. But most of them were atheist pissheads, right? Like, but I think it really brought to the surface an important point. And I got into a bit of a back and forth with somebody. I said, look, you're right. Most of these people are not Christian, but in the modern world, and I think when people say, you know, this war is not about left or right, it's about good versus evil, or it's an ideological war. And I think what we need to be able to separate is that, and I think Australia needs to do this. Leadership in Australia needs to articulate what kind of country we are at a values level. Are we in alignment with Christian values, or are we in alignment with Muslim values? This is sort of the push and pull, and where it really all boils down. Not the Muslim religion or the Christian religion, any of that. What are our values as a nation? Can we agree on that? And I don't think you're going to be able to go through some sort of process to try and create your own set. You've got to adopt something of the two, right? Like, that's what we've got to decide as a nation. And for me, I'm not religious, as in I'm not a God-fearing Christian, but I do believe there is a lot to be said for Christian values. And so I think a lot of that's an interesting discussion about, and it's forcing people like me who are probably more atheist to really go, well, look, where are you going to sit? Do you want to sit in the middle of, like, okay, Australia's an atheist country, where does that leave us? Or is Australian fundamentally a Christian country? And if you come to this nation, you can be an atheist, but understand that these are the Christian values that we, by and large, hold dear to us.
Is it as simple as that, though? Like, is it as simple as you're either Christian or you align with Christian values or align with Muslim values? Like, I don't think it's that simple. And I think, like, I'd love to get your thoughts, and maybe it goes down another rabbit hole, but it's like, to what ends is all this occurring for, right? Like, why is the debate being framed as Christian values versus Muslim values? Why is that the case?
Yeah.
What about human values?
Sure. I think One of the arguments that people were throwing out is that, obviously we are a secular, like we use England, is that we are a secular country at this point, right? But that the country was built upon Christian values, and that's why it was what it was. And so, but again, you put a very good point, is, what are the values that are important to people now, and what's changed over the times. Like I came from a Protestant family, so I went to school, went to church as a kid, and I wouldn't say I was super religious then, but I would say that I'm actually probably more God focused these days. But again, do I find myself going to church? Do I find myself finding faith in church? Not really, because the church has failed us in many ways. So what does Christian values truly mean? And before anyone answers that, I just wanted to let you know, Mark, one of the turning points for versus Hitler was that Hitler was paper and Churchill was scissors, and scissors beats paper. So there you go.
Oh, interesting.
I think when in fact, Adam and I have had a couple of coffees on this, and I don't subscribe to any particular religion. I think when you start picking teams, that's a dangerous place to go, where divisiveness starts to come in because of attaching to certain beliefs. And if Charlie's life was anything about, it was about having that civil discourse in whatever you believe in separately. And I don't believe that you have to subscribe to any particular religion, is my belief. I just have a deep, and whether it's your upbringing or whatever, but this deep knowing of what is right and what is wrong. And I think this is where the spiritual aspect starts to come into this war. And sure, when they're fighting off the Luftwaffes from the Spitfires and whatever else, and they're under actual physical, violent sort of threat. Here we're not. And the Australian way of life has been so tolerant and laid back. Australia has never been occupied, right? They don't know. Australia doesn't know. Australia is soft in comparison. Until you wake up in Australia and they get pissed off, then you better fucking look out, right? But are we there?
What I'm tired of is being labelled far right for wanting to have a conversation about what are the correct values that our country should be adhering to, or the world, whatever. And it's open for debate. It's a debate, right? It's not like I know the answer. I feel like I'm starting to lean right, or more and more right, because the left are becoming so crazy. But that's more a reflection on them than it is a reflection on me, I believe that, and I get frustrated with that. But I feel, Adam, that the lack of religious values, perhaps like in the past where religion has been valued more highly, the lack of religious values and following these days is leading to a vacuum. And in that vacuum, you have a lot of people that are worshipping false deities. So it might be the Green Movement or the ABCD LGBT movement, right? Like there's these people are I'm not going to say the word cult, but they take on this Messiah type complex when they're talking about their issue. And then the people that are not sure what they stand for or what their values are gravitate towards those weird satellite religions, so to speak, right? And I think that is creating a problem, and it's those on the fringes that are most loud, especially on social media. And I'm trying to get my social media algorithm back. I want a bit more finance and macro, because the whole last week has gone to extreme left, extreme right, because that's how the algorithms are programmed to, you know what I mean? That's so
very true.
It's really crazy.
That's true. I mean, I look at mine, and somebody, a really close mate, said, "Are you okay, mate?" And I said, "I think I'm becoming a complete right-wing nut, because the algorithm's just driving me crazy at the moment, and it's just extreme shit." But I do want to just circle back here for a second, because I totally get, like, is it that simple? And like, you're talking to somebody who is pretty pissed off Christian. Like, I grew up in an overly controlled Christian environment and have a real issue with churches because of the way I my childhood was basically stolen almost by a very bad religious cult. Christian, Pentecostal. But Mark, to answer the question, I think this is the part, like, Australians are still in a little bit of a bubble, and we don't think there's a war going on. We don't see bullets flying, right? We don't see any of that. So we think, no, it's not that serious. Why can't we all just get together and love each other? And I listened to Sam Harris talk about this, and I really respect Sam as an intellect, extremely bright. And he said the fundamental, and also Murray as well. So I think it might have been the two of them together, right? Douglas Murray. And they said the fundamental difference, like, we got to understand, we live in a world where there is 2.5 billion Muslims, and I don't know how many Christians, probably similar, right? That have this underlying, philosophy at some level. But the fundamental difference between the two is that Christianity went through a Reformation, and when it went through the Reformation, it adopted a different stance that going forward, this is now a peace and love religion, right? The Old Testament sort of died. And then we look at, the book on which, if you look at the Quran and you actually read, this is a book that is the foundation for billions of people. And when you actually read this stuff, and these verses are still in the book, they haven't had a reformation. Things like slay the unbelievers wherever you find them, right? Maim and crucify the infidels if they criticize Islam. Unbelievers are stupid. Muslims are urged to fight them. Make war on the infidels living in your neighborhood. Terrorize and behead those who believe in scriptures other than the Quran. When the opportunity arises, kill the infidels wherever you find them. These are direct quotes out of the Quran. And so, and I could go on, there's more, right? Most people listening to this have not read the Quran. They have no idea what is actually, and when you confront a Muslim person about this, I say, sure, before I start talking to you, do you believe in these verses? And they will not answer me before engaging. Or I'll send them a video like that video that I put on my social media just the other day, where the young white girl asked the Muslim leader, what do you do though when a Muslim does commit a crime in London? How do you see it? And he said, well, if the law that they have broken is a Sharia law, then sure, we'll respect it, but we will not respect the law unless it's Muslim law. In other words, he's literally saying out loud, we will not respect the law. Right? While he's standing on British soil. Now, this is an extremist guy, and most Muslims are not extreme. I totally get that. But the dark pearl is that in the book, there is justification and room for killing and violence, whereas in the Christian faith after the Reformation, there isn't. And that is the fundamental difference between the ideologies and the sets of values. And you saw it in its worst form, where they literally shot Charlie in the neck for using his voice, shot him straight through the voice, right? So it's, these are the hard questions that people don't want to sit with and talk about and sort of choose a side because they don't want the confrontation.
How much of Sam Harris is a believer in determinism versus free will? I think he believes that most things are largely determined and free will is a bit of a myth. And when you were talking about the Quran versus, and you started to frame the debate, Quran, Christians, it reminded me, I just finished reading, and everyone's probably seen the movie Dune, but I just finished reading the 6 books, and the sequence of events in the books Dune is political fractions coming together, and then after the political war is fought, then it's religious fractions coming together. And I'm sure that if you go out and go back and look at history throughout the cycles, you'll see that it's the same pattern keeps unfolding time after time after time. It's the political left and right, and then it becomes a spiritual war and it becomes a religious war. How much control do we have over these turnings and what is happening? Or like, this is something that's been happening since the beginning of time.
We have, Mark, Australia is a system, a democracy. Let me ask you guys a question. As Australians, Right. Here's another quote. Quran 47.4. Do not seek peace with infidels. Behead them and catch them when you catch them. Right. This is a literal quote. So let me ask you guys something. As a British person, Perye, and as Australians, Mark and Tommy, in Japan, it is illegal to import the Quran.
Correct.
Should we make it illegal in Australia to import this book so that it can go into the heads of young people in our country? And secondly, should we allow somebody to run for office who is not prepared to publicly denounce the belief those phrases out of the Quran? If you believe that and you're not prepared to go on record saying I publicly denounce this, should you be able to run for office?
This is where words are different to actions as well, right? Like this is very similar to saying I don't agree with the things that Charlie Kirk says, so he should be banned, right? I think this is getting into very dangerous territory where you're starting to try and silence, because words are very different to actions, and it's a book that was written thousands of years ago. So this gets into really dangerous territory. I don't think that there's any positive that comes out of doing that.
I think exactly. And it comes down to interpretation as well. You know, there's also a lot of metaphors. I mean, you could, and I'm not going to defend, once again, I'm not religious, but someone could take that and go, okay, we'll make sure you get rid of the bad guy, whatever your opinion of the bad guy is. You know, I think Katie Hopkins, what a mama bear that woman is, right? When she came on stage, and her whole piece that she said was all around, hey, you know, you could be black, you could be white, don't care. You could be this religion or that religion, don't care. But metaphorically, just to paraphrase, when you come into our home with our rules and our values, this is how it rolls here, right? And if you don't like it, you can fuck off.
But is that fair? Like, why should you determine how I live within my home? Why should you determine who?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But you already have your home. Now, if we talk about, let's say it's Australia, this is Australia. My parents were immigrants.
There's many Muslims. There's many Muslims here that this is their home too. They're Australian citizens.
Absolutely. And I think, and once again, I'm not going to go divisive and pick any particular flavor, like Katie said. But my parents were immigrants and came over. We were subject to what, at the moment, the popular flavor is Islam. So we were subject to what they were subject to. I was at school. I was called a wog many times at school, right? The thing is, we had a set of values. We came in and my grandparents worked hard. They came for a better opportunity in Australia, right? And they worked hard. They went and studied hard. They started to learn, like you guys, been very successful in buying real estate. The Greeks are famous for it in Australia, right? They came up through with a set of values that they brought, and they learned what are the rules here. They had their own community and their own practices of what they would do, but at the deeper level and spiritually, we're all about the same thing. And there's something very weird that's going on. And the fish always starts to rot in the head. I think we're playing down in the battleground here, right? The issue is coming from a place a lot higher. The faceless thing that we can't force us, that we can't see.
I think we're flirting dangerously close to dealing in extremes here. Right? Like I have a lot of Muslim friends. I have very close friends who are Muslim, and they are nothing like the words in that scripture. And by talking about the extremists, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the extremists.
Right or left?
We're talking about
but whoever interprets those words in that way are the extremists. This was a book that was written years ago.
Yeah.
In your words, Mark, what is the culture of Australia these days?
I think we're losing the culture of Australia. I find it more difficult than ever to describe the culture of Australia, because everywhere I turn, I see false deities and I see people worshipping things that I think they shouldn't be worshipping, and that leaves me disgruntled and disorientated, right?
So, and that's the things, because obviously Australia is a secular country as well, right? So it is not based on religion. It is based on people having the opportunity to believe whatever religions that they want. And so these false deities under the secular belief is that they should be able to believe them, and that would be under Australian culture, or not?
I think it has been. I think it has been. I think it's fair to say that it has been part of Australian culture. That, you know, I'm not necessarily saying that multiculturalism is a success, because I think that there's some issues with multiculturalism, the way that it's described. But I think yeah, you've been able to kind of believe what you want to believe here. I think that's changing. What I don't like is that when it becomes one-sided or pushed by the powerful people with influence. A specific side of the debate is being pushed, and so I'm really reluctant to try and push that opposite side from the minority side, right? I'm reluctant to push that side because I don't like when that side gets pushed on me by the elites, an opposite side, right?
One of the things that I really that didn't actually sit well with me at the protest was, and again, you know,
I know where you're going.
It was more of a symbolic thing, but it was when the New Zealanders, lovely people, they came on, and it was one in particular, but they started ripping the flags, and it was just very, very strong for me personally, and I think it was because one of the things that they said is, you know, all these religions like Buddhism and they're all false religions, and you know, for me again, it's just that's not what I was there for.
Yeah,
that's
same.
not what I was interested in.
I've had people, some of my Muslim friends, basically say, I've had enough with Elon Musk because he spoke at the event based on the fact that he saw that the Maoris and the like, you know, that this is the problem. I don't know. I'm so torn because you know, how do you win playing in the middle, right? How do you win if you don't pick a side, right? It's unwinnable in a sense where you've got the majority going at each other. But you know, I just hate to focus on the extremes.
I think, you know, Perry, just to that point, it gave me chills having grown up in a deluded, control freaky, cult Christian upbringing, right? When that New Zealand pastor got on stage and started going, we denounce Buddhism, we denounce Hinduism, they're all false gods, the only God is our God. And then he gets the Muslim flag, and the Palestinian flag, and tears it up, and the only one I probably would celebrate is the terrorism flag.
That was uncomfortable.
We can all agree that that's bad.
That was uncomfortable. That's divisive.
But to get the Palestinian flag is to say every Palestinian, which is wrong. Most correct. Palestinians are peaceful, loving, amazing people, right? And this is what people often get wrong with me. They think, oh, you hate Palestine. And, you know, that I got people when I spoke up about Charlie Kirk, where were you when Palestine? I said, dude, I'm talking about a guy that was murdered in front of the whole world, not about Palestine right now, but they can't separate. But to get that flag, any flag, and just say everybody, boom. And I just felt like saying, get the fuck off the stage, you piece of shit Christian nut job. And that's how I really felt like when I was watching him. And he was, in my opinion, a divisive, horrible, you know, he just didn't want to give that mic up. He was a preacher, and I was just like, dude, shut the fuck up. But Mark, what it does, I think this is really important, I think, for Australians. And I'm glad we're having this verbose discussion, but because it does force, what terrifies me is when I look at London and the UK, and I see the people in power have different ideologies, and the country does not look like the country that it was, right? The Mayor of London just announced, this is not right-wing propaganda. This is fact. he just announced 40,000 homes being built in London, prioritizing minorities, specifically Muslims, so that they can get affordable housing close to mosques, etc. And he, of course, is Muslim himself. Now, imagine if you announced that in Australia, we're going to build 40,000 homes and we're prioritizing Muslims. Imagine what would happen in our country. In the UK, it's actually to the point where it's actually happening. And I think Australia needs to start asking these first principles questions, like, if you're coming from a country like this, because there's two ways to invade a country. One is to do it through, a hot war, because really, what were we resisting in the UK? We were resisting an ideology that condoned mass murder of people based on race, right? That's what the Germans were doing, and so here we have a different kind of invasion, and this one is being done very differently.
What were the two, Adam? What were the two ways? Because I want to add something onto the end of that. What were the two ways?
The other way is to stop having the West aren't having kids. Muslim families are having kids at a massive rate more than Australians, and there's plenty of videos that you can go online and see Muslim leaders saying, "We will win by death or by breeding," one or the other. And it's a battle. There's people at the heads of these movements, the Christian movement and the Muslim movement, that are not good people, that are trying to dominate the world with an ideology. And the Achilles heel of democratic countries is just have kids and get them into power. It only takes a generation to change the history of a country without a bullet fired. And the UK is now Muslim representation of power.
What I find incredible, and I've gone down some of the rabbit holes, and I consider myself someone who questions everything and tries to think critically. The thing that's been really striking about the Charlie Kirk and the protests is I'm seeing so much online that it feels like they want us to see. It's like you're seeing photos of Charlie Kirk's wake. You're seeing people zooming in on the ring. You're seeing politicians that are not trying to bring the temperature down. They're trying to bring the temperature up. And I don't want to go down the tinfoil rabbit hole, but I'm starting to think that the motive is to wind us up. The motive is to get us focused on the extremes. And I'm starting to ask myself, okay, for what ends is this occurring? What's really going on? Bigger picture that they're trying to distract us with, because this is why I try and stay Switzerland as much as I can and try not to get onto the chooser side, because I feel like this is the intention. So much of what I saw in the post Charlie Kirk, I feel has happened to try and rally the troops. And I think, well, and I'm not claiming this, but I'm saying, is it possible that if there's martyrs on the Muslim side, that there could be martyrs on the Christian side as well, right? It is possible. And I asked ChatGPT a question on the weekend. I said, ChatGPT 5, if you were the devil, how would you destroy the minds of the younger generation? And it says, without any further prompting, if I were the devil and wanted to destroy the mind of the younger generation, I wouldn't come with fire and horns. I'd do it quietly, slowly, and almost invisibly. I'd convince them that pleasure is purpose. Flood them with endless noise. They never learn silence or depth. Normalize distraction until focus feels impossible. Blur the line between truth and lies so nothing feels certain. That was me, how I felt all weekend. Teach them to chase validation over virtue. Make them believe that they're free while enslaving them to algorithms. Strip away wonder, turning everything sacred into a commodity. That's how you dismantle a generation without them even noticing. And I just keep asking myself, what the fuck is going on right now? What is the real thing that we are being distracted and being forced to fight this ideological war for? Over the week.
Yeah.
It's the oldest trick in the book, Mark. Geopolitically, and the US, there's books written about this stuff. The US have been very good, according to the book, that, you get that country to fight with that country, so they're not fighting with us. Now we can do this down from, because of technology, we can do it down to the individual level, and movements that can be through digital media, where you can get people fighting amongst each other. So I think my belief in this is that there is something going on. There is this divisive drive constantly. We saw the polarization that came with COVID. We saw the polarization that's come with the DIO movement. Now we've got the polarization that's happening with the migration stuff. But it's all beautifully coordinated right around the planet. I mean, beautifully coordinated. It seems to be every country seems to have the same move at the same time. How does that happen? So what is it we can't see? The fish starts to rot in the head. What is it that we can't see? What's really going on?
Whoever is behind assassinating Charlie Kirk, do you think that they, unless it was just some random crazy 22-year-old, right? If that's it, that's it. But if it is planned, and someone wanted him gone, well, do you think now that they're disappointed that everyone's rallying to his cause? Or do you think that's what they wanted?
Right? Like, is that what they want?
Do you know what I mean? Like, how do we? And if we tie this back to finance and macro and making money, which is what a lot of the listeners tune in for, you know, we're going through the biggest monetary shift since 1971. The world is quietly moving to the gold standard. You've got India, you've got Kim Jong-un, President Xi,
this is BRICS
Modi,
getting gold,
and Putin all holding hands at an event. And then you've got America, the Secretary of War, saying that we're gonna tone back the rhetoric against China and we're gonna focus on our shores at home. And then there's big changes afoot.
One thing that happened the day after the assassination is that the US Senate blocked a vote to release the Epstein files the day after.
That's
interesting.
Right?
Whose names do you think might be in that list?
Who
knows, right? Who knows? What would be the fallout of that? But anyway, that's another discussion. But Mark, it is interesting that, you know, like, you ask ChatGPT within a Christian context,
sure,
if you were the devil, right? And you're dealing with an AI built within a Christian country. It could be quite interesting to see how that might play in a Muslim. If you were wanting to,
had the language learning model in
if it was that was answered from the framework of the whole framework and context of, you know, Christian, Jesus, and the devil, right? Like, it's a different.
If you asked if and
you
I'm not targeting Muslims, but I'm saying if the Muslims wanted to destroy the younger generation, or if the politicians, or if asking if someone else from how
would you destroy the culture? What would be considered a sin, or how would you? It could be a very different response because of the fundamental frameworks and beliefs. You know, like it gets down to this. Like at the moment in the US,
so who is the devil? Who is the who? Yeah.
Well,
we're back.
You're working within a framework that you're not even aware you were working within for a moment, you know.
We're just back to leftists, right?
Like I saw this morning, you know, do you know what I mean? Like I saw a Muslim guy apparently in the States at the moment. They're going door to door, probably extreme, but they're going from door to door and knocking on local small business owners saying, we're just warning you that if you don't take our alcohol and other haram from your store, you're welcome to sell it, but we're going to start protesting outside your store if it's not gone within 30 days. This is your notice. And they're filming themselves doing it and putting it online, right? This comes down to an ideological difference of opinion that is disruptive to the society that we enjoy in the West, right? And so this is where we do need to get down to, I think, as nations. Like when I go to the Middle East, I am very aware to the point of actually researching what is acceptable in this country, what isn't as acceptable. You know, when you go to Bali or Indonesia, if a woman's on her periods, they ask them not to go into the temples. And most Australian women will respect that. Most visitors will respect that. And if you don't respect that, you can expect to be arrested or to be, you know, penalized in some way. And I think Australia needs to, what's unfortunately happened is because we have this weak leadership, we're not having these hard discussions, which are uncomfortable to have, Mark, to say, all right, what is, like, when we get an immigrant in at the border, what basic questions should we be asking as to what you believe, right? Like these guys that are running around killing people in Melbourne and injuring them with machetes, what do they believe? What is their ideology? What's in their head?
Well,
right? Before we give you free reign and access to our kids and our people and walk around as a free, publicly supported citizen, what the fuck is in your head?
Well,
right?
this is dangerous though, Adam, because we were joking about the thought police in the UK while we were there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would have broken the law. I don't know how many thousands of times while I was there, according to that. So once again, I think we've got to be really careful about not what do you believe, but if Charlie Kirk's life was worth anything, it was about being able to have that civil discourse. You know what? You can believe whatever you believe. And this is what Katie Hopkins was saying as well. I really don't give a fuck what you believe. I mean, I respect it, but it's all about giving that respect, being able to have that tough discussion. But I think it's more about how do you behave, right? Where does it go beyond that? I think everybody should be respectful for their beliefs, and no one has a right to impose their beliefs on anybody else. I have mine, you have yours, and if you subscribe to a certain team, call it a religion, well, okay, fine, but I'm still an individual. I have my beliefs. I'll respect yours, you respect mine. It might fire things up in me, but I'm not going to go and kill someone because I think it's wrong.
If I could take the other side of the vibe or the mood that I've been portraying for this pod, I mean, what if since World War II, globally, we've had like one of the most peaceful times in history. There still has been satellite wars and things like that, but it's been one of. What if that was the real illusion, and we're simply going back to the war may not be fought with nukes because that'll be assured mutual destruction. What if we are going what if we are going into a war and it's going to be fought with algorithms, which is plausible given AI and things like that. And we do have to choose a side. There is, and I hate to admit it, but I'm one of the first to say that the only way that these things heal and we come together is either through a war against a foreign nation, a civil war amongst ourselves, or a deep, deep, dark economic depression. The only way that these things resolve and we come together in history. There's no other way. And so, what if one of those paths does have to be an algorithmic war? Because that's what this is. This is an algorithmic war. This is a virus of the mind.
Well, roll the dice, Mark, and we'll see which one we hit.
Yeah, it's a scary thought, and to I think we have to be discussing it because it's affecting our everyday lives. And I'm an optimist, and I genuinely think that in 20 years from now, when my kids are all grown up, that they're going to be living through one of the greatest times in history. But what's the path to getting there? That I don't know. I honestly don't know. I can't predict that. And so I think we have to be open to both sides of the debate, right? Like I've maybe disagreed with some of the things that you guys have put forward, but I also am really open to both sides of this debate because you're a fool if you think you actually know the answer of how it's going to play out. And we do need to stay vigilant.
Yeah, I think the point, Tommy, that both of you made is very valid. You can't stop and shouldn't stop people believing whatever they believe. I guess what I'm driving at is, I guess maybe at the next level, it comes down to enforcement or whatever. It's just, I don't know. I just feel like in Australia, for some reason, I have a very strong sense when I go to the Middle East, for example, of like what's acceptable and what's not. Like I feel like people go in there with a lot more, like, you don't want to fuck it up in the UAE. Do you know what I mean? Like people just know that, right? Like they just know that, right? But in Australia, I don't feel people really have that much fear or respect for what Australia is. In the UK, it's a laughing stock. Like they're literally live streaming themselves across the channel, rolling in there and getting their free checks in their 4-star hotel. While I'm interviewing a veteran on the street whose son killed himself 3 weeks before the rally because he got no support. So that's the extreme of like zero respect for the country they're going to. And in America, where we're seeing them go into small businesses and say, you better get this shit off yourselves because it doesn't agree with our religion. That is like zero respect for the country that you're arriving into. So what I'm sort of getting at is I would hate it. I think Australia has lost its way. People don't respect the culture, and they're just getting more and more emboldened, more and more emboldened. And Australians are just sitting there going, I don't know what to do. I don't know. I don't want to be called a racist because nobody does. But like, where's the Australian respect? Where's the respect for our country that you see in the UAE? Like, you don't want to fuck around and find out there. And I think Australia's got to move a little bit more towards that. Like, but you can't earn that respect if you don't know who you are as a nation. And Australia doesn't know who it is as a nation anymore. It's become this weak, mixed, tolerant, and the UK is the poster child of tolerance. Europe is become the poster child of tolerance, and it's ruined this incredible place. And it's not an opinion, it's fact. And when I talk to people on the streets, like I was staying in a very nice hotel in London, I talk to people and they're like, here in London, and it's just not what it was. It's not safe. One guy literally said, if you don't live in zone 1 or 2, it's not safe. And I'm like, wow. And he'd been there for 15 years, that's sad.
Yeah, we look, Australia has been such a tolerant, once again, comes down to, they haven't had to fight for their survival and their beliefs within their own country. Australia's never been occupied, right? And I think that's a big part of it, because when you're put under pressure in those situations, you learn who the hell you are, and then who you are as a country, and what you do believe in, and where you're united on that, and therefore what you will fight for, right? It hasn't really been tested. I lived in Singapore for over a decade, and there is no tolerance like the UAE. If you don't like it, you literally are escorted within 48 hours to the airport, right? And you are kicked out of that country. They know who they are. They know what their plan is. They know what they're about. They know what their values are. And that's very multicultural. It's very multicultural there too.
Australia is too. Like Aussies, I reckon most Aussies would say that Aussies are multicultural. Like, there are Indians watching this that are Aussie as fuck, right?
Yeah, totally.
They love the cricket. They love a beer. They love a laugh. There's Hindu Indians. There's wogs like you blokes that would link arm in arm. I call you a wog. You call me a fucking pommy, convict. And that's Australia, right? Like, we are multicultural.
Can we go back to those friendly racist talks, please?
Yeah, like, why can't we just be mildly racist, diversified Australian culture?
I would happily go back to those days when I was called a greasy wog, because that was just like child's play compared to today. Jeez.
But you can't exactly put your arm around the average Muzzo and go, come here, you fucking bombing asshole. Like, it doesn't go down the same way, right?
You mentioned
like, I'm taking you to DEI, right? They don't have that same sense of humor. They don't have that same camaraderie. Whereas the average Aussie, when they come in, like I said, I've got, like, when the bloke was going on about Hindus, I know heaps of Hindus. I know heaps of Muslims, actually, Muslim Aussies that are fucking awesome people. I don't hate Muslims. I just hate the extreme view, and I hate the fact that Australia is losing, or it doesn't even know what its identity is anymore. And it's kind of racist to defend it. And I saw a great sign of the thing, and it said, realism is not racism. And Australia needs to really figure out what it is again, and start to articulate what it is, and start to provide real penalty to people who just piss all over it.
To follow on what Mark said beforehand with the prompt he put into ChatGPT, is that this is making us hyper aware. Okay, this is making us to the point where we see everything all the time, every second, and every single thing is happening at the same time. And so you're seeing the worst of it all in 1 second, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and just deleting the app or turning your phone off can calm the mind once in a while.
Yeah, amplification. We've got these leverages, levers that are just amplify things, and so quickly.
and we're not built for it. Like, our brains are not built for it. And I can tell on the other side, and I think about this, like, I have to check myself, because the algorithms reward those who propagate it. You know, like, I've had, as I'm sitting here today, I have, you know, because I've been at this rally, if I look at my profile today, here it is as of this morning, and you guys have been following this. Last 30 days, 8.3 million views on my Instagram account. That's out of control, right? 8.3 million on Instagram just in the last 30 days. So the algorithm's going, hey, keep doing this. Why? Because it brings more eyeballs, more engagement to who? To Instagram, right?
Yeah.
So that they can monetize attention. And I am becoming a VIP fucking asshole to them well, I am. Like, you watching are the product. I am the unpaid employee of Instagram to draw in and keep people's attention, and it's not lost on me, right? And I'm a human, and you do get addicted to the incentivization that's there. And I'm just telling you straight, like, when you've got 8.3 million people looking at it, yeah, fuck, keep doing this. This is what people want. No, it's not. Sometimes you have to reflect deeply. A Coldplay song, am I part of the cure or am I part of the disease?
Yeah.
You know? And right now, I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Well,
it's really
I respect
fucking
the honesty.
It's really
the honesty.
But
Adam, how else, other than sit here with a couple of mates, do you work that out, right? And this is why the conversation is so important, right? Like, you have to be able to sit here, and whether it be in private, I mean, we choose to do it in a public forum, but we're sitting here with a couple of mates, and we're trying to work these things out, not for clicks or for eyeballs, but because we genuinely want to work these things out for ourselves as well, right? We're not claiming to have all the answers to be perfect.
Mark, yeah, 100%. Right now in my life, like, the day before the rally, I'm in the south of France in the best hotel maybe in Europe. Like, it was incredible, and it was like God or the universe. And as I said, I'm not religious, but fuck, some of the shit that's happened in my life recently, I'm sitting there and I'm like, literally looking at Italy and France on the other side and Monaco and enjoying that. And then the next day, I'm there with a war veteran with 1 million patriots behind me in the UK. And it's like I'm being shown, like, two paths right now. Like, do you want to go this path or do you want to go and enjoy the fruits of your labor and just buy a house in the south of France where I fucking feel incredible? I feel so spiritually at home and alive in that place, in nature and the beauty of it all and the art of it all. I don't know, man. Like, fuck.
Yeah, that's such a valid point, right? Like, I know some people disagree with Andrew Tate because he's another polarizing figure, but he said the similar thing. He said, I've got enough money to disappear off into the abyss and to live a happy life. He goes, but I want to stay and fight. And it's like, I'm thinking the same thing. I'm thinking, should I just shut the fuck up and enjoy my life and my family, or should I keep putting it out there? And it's kind of like, you know, it's hard. It's contradictory.
Everything you fought for that you thought was going to bring you happiness, and at the end of the day, what I've discovered is really it's about serving. At the end of the day, being connected with your mates and so on, but being there to help and bring positive change to the planet, really, you know. And I think that's part of the reason that we're also doing this right now and covering a story like that and what a historic turning point type event and getting those words out. I mean, Adam, you know, and I've spent a bit of time with you, like in Cyprus and so on, and have had the front seat to your life. But it's interesting. I think there's a lot of people that wouldn't understand or know who you really are. And I've had the opportunity to learn a lot more about who you are. And if anything, you know, on public show, and I took that little sort of grab at the end there when you finished that interview. I'd like to ask you a question. And what is it that, because it was twice that it happened. The Irish lady that said that, you know, the Irish were there to help support Britain in this spiritual battle and everything they fought for, and you got emotional after that. But I mean, you started crying after the interview with the digger there and his son, the serviceman. What was going on inside you, and what triggered that emotional response?
I think a few things triggered it. First of all, I've lost a few mates to suicide in recent times. That's one. And I think I could just feel the absolute loss of that man's son. I could feel the pain, and I was looking straight in his eyes, and I could just feel it, like that this poor kid has gotten to a point where in his own country he didn't feel loved, and this is a country that he did go all in on the idea of service, to the point where he put his life at risk, took up, you know, the role of protecting a country and what he believed in, and they just did not support him at all, to the point where he ended up killing himself. And there's his dad at the march. So I found that very, but I also, I don't know, I guess I was swept up in the moment of being there. Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess I'm just sad, and like I'm like, there's a thing I saw this morning, and it's this little cartoon, you know, this elephant sitting on the park bench with a rabbit, and the elephant says, "What do you miss?" And the rabbit says, "I missed the way I viewed the world before I knew too much about it." You know, and that's what we see in children, isn't it? You know, where you see that beautiful wonder, they're not distracted. Mark, I love seeing your stories with Frankie, you know, that just the innocence and the beauty of it all. But I don't know, yeah, Tommy, that's the thing. I sometimes wonder, I think a lot about this stuff, and just like, what brings joy at the end of the day, and is it engaging in this war, or is it buying a dog and forcing yourself to just unprogram yourself from the matrix? Because there was a simpler time where people found joy in simple things. They found joy in growing their own food. They found joy in their family. They found joy in just simple things. Now I feel like I'm plugged in 24/7, and it's just constant, like, and I feel like if I go down that other path, I'm gonna die, you know, maybe a famous unhappy person.
Well, you know, it was the day before the event, and we were sitting at that bar, Adam, and I did just say to you, I said, "What do you want to do? You know, do we want to go down this route where we start talking on, you know, politics and economics and go heavier and heavier down that, or do we not? And where's the point where there's a line that we cross, you know?" And again, I'm challenged with this every single day, because I'm seeing the light in both paths at the moment, and you know, I find it difficult. I'm, you know, coming on these podcasts more, and I find it difficult. I love doing them, but you know, there's part of me that goes, just as you guys have said, shut up, shut the fuck up, and just get on with your life and enjoy it, you know. And then the other part's like, there's something that needs to shout out louder, and there's no right reason, like right choice, but we have to just understand that if we do go down certain routes, that you have to push forward.
I look at Mark and his relationship with Frankie and his beautiful wife Dom, and when I spoke to Tommy off camera, I said, "Tommy, like, do you mind me asking, like, how are you? Like, having gone down this path that you're going down?" He said, "Let me put it this way, Adam. I've lost my wife. My kids worry about their dad every single day. There's death threats on me constantly." And you think, wow, like, you see that brief moment where you've got 50 security guards trying to get him through the crowd to the stage, and you think, wow, what an amazing guy, right? But that's Tommy for 5 minutes. Like, you've got to live Tommy's life to really understand whether you want to walk that path. The sacrifice these guys make is not small. And I would hate that for, like, Mark, who's one of my really good friends. If I said, Mark, you know, you can change the world or you could lead Australia and make a difference, but you got to give up your relationship with Frankie and Dom, what kind of deal is that? Right? Like, every day of Frankie's life, she's going to worry that Mark's going to take a bullet in the head. Like, what kind of life is that for his kids? It's fucking real, right? The price is real to go and
Charlie Kirk.
And these are deals that people are taking, and you know, I think so many of us get embroiled in the debate online and live each day as if we are Charlie Kirk, in a sense, like in our mind, right? And but when it's not coming with, you know, the university tours and everything, but it's coming with the heaviness of wearing that, and it's coming with the lack of presence for your family, and maybe you're not going to be in danger of getting shot and things like that, but you're weighing yourself down with that debate that you're maybe half in, half out. And I ask myself the same question all the time. It's like, what do I want? What is my war? You know, what is my war? Adam, we've had conversations on the side where I've spoken to you about my interest in wanting to talk about the intersection of macro and AI and how this is coming together and how everyone can use it. And it's, you know, you have to really ask yourself that question, because I think a lot of people are getting dragged into a war that isn't theirs. But then, is that any different from World War I or World War II, where the citizens were getting dragged into a war that wasn't theirs, or Vietnam? You know, is that part and parcel of being a human, right? It's just that we're all playing it out real time in front of everyone, like the Truman Show, right?
I mean, maybe, Mark, you know, the thing that all humans need to believe in, and this is an interesting observation or thought that I've had just now, is that if we all, regardless of race, refuse to engage in war is so evil, so profoundly evil. And then we reframe and expand what war is, and we refuse to engage in war no matter what. And then we reframe war to say, and that includes online algorithmic mind virus wars. You know, that if we just stopped participating, that might be the only way to solve this.
Yeah.
You know? And imagine the world if social media did not exist. Again, how responsible is that? You know, I don't know, but it's very interesting, and it sounds like the deal that people believe they're making with God. Like, I'm sure Tommy believes that he's made a deal with God and doing good work, but it really sounds like he's made a deal with the devil in a lot of ways, in terms of the reality of the life he leads, right? Not just him. Anybody, the rewards of it seem to be more akin to making a deal with the devil.
And you know what, Adam?
Freedom has a price. You
know what, Adam? That applies to entrepreneurs as well, right? Like, and I'm a huge fan of Elon Musk and the technology, and I believe that it's going to be a force for good, and it's going to bring abundance to the world and whatever. But you know, the same applies for entrepreneurs like Elon Musk. Really, he's made a kind of deal with the devil as well, because in order to achieve what he wants to achieve and to do the things and get the companies to where they need to go, look at the life he has to live. You know, his head would always be busy. You know, he's got 13 kids. I'm sure he doesn't spend quality time with any single one of them. He's had multiple wives, right? Like, it's, you know, at the end of the day, and, you know, he risks getting shot as well. You know, he's followed around 24/7 with security guards. And, you know, I think that conversation with ourselves is an important conversation. You know, but I'm so torn and conflicted, because we're moving into a world where money, like I said to Dom, she's so in. What I love about Dom is sometimes she doesn't play in all this debate, but sometimes she says the most intuitive things. And I said to her yesterday, I said, oh, you know, I'm managing Frankie's Raise account, and you know, if I keep managing the way I'm managing it, you know, I really want her. What I noticed today is all the millennials that are complaining in the 40s are the ones that didn't work their asses off in their 20s, right? And I'm like, if Frankie works her ass off in her 20s, then when she's in her 30s and she wants to do a deal or whatever, I'll give her this money that I've been managing for her. And Dom said, yeah, but you're assuming that money is going to be an important thing in 20 years. Like having that money is going to be what matters. She goes, that might not be the thing. She goes, look at the way the world is going. Look at technology. Money might be in abundance. She might not need your money. And I'm torn between that, because we're moving into a world where I do genuinely believe money is going to be in abundance through universal income or through AI universal income, right? And attention might be the thing, the true currency, and having a following. And so we're in this battle. It's like, what am I trying to build? Am I trying to build love? Am I trying to build money? Am I trying to build following? Like, the world is moving so quick, and none of us are equipped to deal with the realities of how quickly it's moving. And this is where I get, I get drawn back into, I don't know, call it Christian values or whatever they're perceived as, but it's like, it's that community of 100 people, your closest 100 people, or your closest 20 people, and being there for your neighbors, that neighborhood of people, and everything else is just a distraction.
I agree, Mark. Kids spell love, Time, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of wisdom in again, that's I think a great Aussie value that we should all adopt, which is family and nature, connection with nature and community. Those are really valuable things, regardless of where you're from. And I look at my mates who have nurtured that and developed that, and I think that's such a really, really wise investment. Guys, we're running out of time, or we've run out of time. I hope you enjoyed this pod, listeners. If you did, drop a like, drop a comment. Remember, we don't have all this worked out. We're working out our thoughts in front of thousands of people every week on these pods. I responded to a comment last week saying, look, I don't have all the answers. I'm just embarrassing myself each week with stuff that I know I'll probably look back in 5 years and go, what a fucking idiot. Like, look at what he believed back then. And he was so fucking dumb. He put it on record in front of thousands of people. But that's, if you want to lose your ego, start a podcast, because people will point out every fucking flaw in your thinking. They'll point out, your teeth, your hair, your eyebrows are too wide, whatever. But we're working it out in real time. And I appreciate you coming along for the journey, guys. I know I'm wrong about a lot of stuff. I know all you guys feel the same. But, it's only by doing it that we grow. And, we're in the arena here, so having a swing.
Perye, I was just going to say, this is the first time I'll ever say, well, usually I welcome the negative comments, but this time, given the way that this podcast is wound down, I'll say, if you're tempted to write a negative comment right now, close YouTube and ring a family member or ring someone you love and fucking tell them you love them, all right? Fuck off. We don't need your negativity in the comments today, all right?
Everybody deserves to be heard. Everybody deserves to be heard.
No, go for it. Go for your life. I love it.
Well, Tommy, thank you for your support up in London, flying in especially for the event. I will see you back in Cyprus soon enough. Just before you go, Tommy, in a couple of words, how do you like Cyprus? What has been your experience for people? Just really quickly.
Oh my God, I feel at home. I've told so many of the Cypriots there as well. Cab drivers are always the best barometer, right? And he said, Tommy, these people, they come here and it's very good for the business. You can do big business here now, but we know how to balance their life, and we know how to live life still today, and that I love, right? That mix, and I think cool. I can do some really sort of cool, mentally stimulating, world-changing stuff here and contribute, and also I can live a beautiful life here in the Med. Freedom.
Yeah.
What else can I say, mate? Freedom.
Watching you arrive and get your place right in Old Town. It's been such a joy helping you acclimate. And I had so much good time with Tommy's a mate of mine from the Gold Coast, and one of the first to relocate to Cyprus when I relocated. And we spent a lot of time together. And and he's got a really cool little place right in the middle of Old Town, right above this brand new development with a wicked coffee shop. I think Tommy's there because it's the beauty salon underneath and all the hot stuff.
6-minute walk from the marina. 6-minute walk from the marina, and that has to be
probably over the balcony, just seeing who's going to go have a coffee with.
Yeah. Interestingly, Adam would call me and say, "Hey, mate, want to have lunch here? Where? How about under your place again?"
I'll know where to come. I'll know where to find you.
We'll see you, Tommy.
Eye candy where Tommy lives. He could always just drop the hook off the balcony and just reel one up. Perry, thank you for all your efforts, mate, and a big shout out for staying up till 2 a.m.
Yeah,
we appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, man, I'm tired.
Yeah, you go to bed. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate
like,
it, guys.
subscribe, comment, and hurl abuse at us. Bye for now, guys.
Okay.
Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that episode of Unemployable. If you'd like to watch another episode, just click there.